You know as well as I do that when the going gets tough, the Game Freaks go to Kanto. The Kanto region is the ace in the hole for Game Freak anytime that they need to add in new Pokemon forms, make something sell well, or just create a new Charizard form to keep the Gen 1ers buying the new games. Kanto is the epitome of Pokemon for a lot of fans. Whether they need to talk about how great Pokemon used to be back in my day, or how Gen 1 had such original designs, or even if they need to karma farm a joke on Twitter or Reddit. Kanto truly is all-reliable for fans and Game Freak alike. However, not all of the Kanto Pokemon get to bask in the love of almighty Game Freak. Some of the original 151 Pokemon are kinda like me in a high school gym class and never get chosen by Game Freak. More than that, it seems like these Pokemon may go beyond just being ignored by Game Freak and instead are straight up unloved by the company generation after generation after generation. After seeing another volume of Pokemon I Don't Care About published by Game Freak and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, I think it's time we talk about these scorned Pokemon. We are kicking off this list with a Pokemon near and dear to my heart. One of my favorite Pokemon of all time, one of the top 5 best in the Kanto region, Golduck. Now you may be thinking, what do you mean? The Pokemon Company loves Psyduck. It's everywhere. That is exactly my point. Psyduck is everywhere. Golduck suffers from what I like to call the Raichu effect. The Raichu effect is when an earlier stage Pokemon is loved and considered superior to the final stage of a line. Like how Pikachu is treated compared to Raichu, and how Psyduck is treated compared to Golduck. Don't get me wrong, I am a huge fan of both Psyduck and Golduck, but where is the love for our blue super swimmer? Golduck is not lacking in the stat total department. With a whopping 500 BST, it is in league with some elite Pokemon like Alakazam, Aegislash, Gengar, Beware, and the Scyther family. The issue, however, wasn't the BST it was given, it was the stat spread. I mean, this Pokemon was given almost even stats across the board, and unless you're a legendary like Mew or Victini, this does not bode well for your usefulness. However, that was just where the disrespect from Game Freak started in Generation 1. The real insult happens generation after generation when Game Freak and the Pokemon Company repeatedly overlook Golduck's line as a choice for a regional variant. I mean, come on, this Pokemon has been an amazing candidate for a new form since the idea was brought into Pokemon. The Golduck line has all kinds of entries and references to its immense and latent telekinetic powers, yet here we are in Generation 9 and Psyduck and Golduck are still not Psychic types. When will the disrespect end for this Pokemon? When will Golduck get the love that Psyduck gets every day? It's time for both parts of this evolutionary line to get the attention they both deserve. Let's move on to the king of Kanto, the best Pokemon to come out of the first generation, the behemoth, Dragonite. Now if you have seen this channel at all, you know that I am a huge Dragonite fan. He's my favorite Kanto Pokemon, my favorite Pokemon of my favorite type, my favorite pseudo-legendary, and all-around good boy. I simply cannot make a list that discusses unloved Pokemon and not include our huggable dragon. This Pokemon is, of course, not lacking in the stats department. This dragon has been a threat in every single generation in Pokemon's history. When a Dragonite hits the field, you better pray for some hail. But stats aren't the focus when it comes to this Pokemon not getting love. As many of you guessed as soon as I said this Pokemon's name, we are discussing the intentional blind eye that Game Freak has when it comes to giving this Pokemon any new forms. Dragonite is a prime candidate for a new form of any kind. It's loved by many fans, has an odd evolutionary line that lends itself to unique callbacks from its previous forms, and it's a pseudo-legendary. In fact, speaking of pseudos, Dragonite is the only one released in the first 6 generations to not get a new form since the Kalos region. Tyranitar got a Mega and a Paradox form, Metagross has a Mega, Salamence got a Mega and a Paradox form, Garchomp got a Mega, Hydreigon got a Paradox form, and Goodra got a Hisuian form. But Dragonite did not receive a Mega, Gigantamax form, Hisuian form, or even a Paradox, even though it is the first pseudo-legendary ever created. There really is no answer besides Game Freak intentionally choosing not to give this Pokemon a new form. Maybe they are scared to touch this perfect Pokemon, maybe they are saving its new form for something truly powerful to match this competitive threat, but I think it's about time that Dragonite be selected for some special treatment. Bring back the OG Dragon. I don't know when Dragonite will be chosen to get a new form, I just hope that when it does, it's fitting for the firstborn of all Dragon Pokemon. Now the next Pokemon is going to get me some hate, so please don't attack me in the comments or I will cry. I think it is time to discuss one of the most hated Pokemon in Kanto. A Pokemon that is not only unloved by Game Freak, but is unloved by almost every fan of the franchise. I am talking about the human-shaped Pokemon, Jynx. Right off the bat, let's talk about so many of the interesting choices they made early on with this Pokemon. Why is it called the human-shaped Pokemon? Why do they call it seductive in the red and blue Pokédex? Why do they straight up show off its feet in the anime? I am just so scared and confused. Moving on, it is no secret that this Pokemon was the focal point of a Pokemon controversy back in Generation 1. We won't go too deep into the details on this video, but perhaps I will in a future video. This controversy rightfully resulted in the changing of some design elements for Jynx between Red and Blue and when Pokemon Yellow was released. However, they kept the original design of this Pokemon in the Japanese versions of the game until Generation 3, which was a bold choice to say the least. Since the controversy though, the Pokemon Company has went out of their way to avoid giving this Pokemon too much attention. They did end up giving it a pre-evolution with Smoochum in Generation 2, but I am almost inclined to believe that they wanted this to serve as a nicer, cuter version of Jynx that they could utilize instead of the controversial Pokemon. I mean, Smoochum has made several recent appearances in the anime, like being Nini's main Pokemon in the X and Y anime, and showing up in the Power of Us movie. However, Jynx has not made a major appearance in the anime since the Advanced Generation anime series 17 years ago. Another way that this Pokemon is lacking in love is the fact that many fans consider Jynx, Electabuzz, and Magmar as somewhat of a trio. All three are right next to each other in the dex, they share the trio typing of Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, all three learn their corresponding elemental punches, and all three got baby forms in the Johto region. However, when the Sinnoh games came out, Magmar and Electabuzz got evolutions in Magmortar and Electivire, making these original single-stage Pokemon into 3-stage lines. However, Jynx was left behind from its trio mates. We have now had 5 more generations where Jynx has been ignored in the games, receiving no evolution like Magmar and Electabuzz, or a regional form based more in its Norse themes as well as being ignored in the anime, not making a major appearance in 17 years. It is honestly tough for me to say this as Jynx really freaks me out, but maybe it is time that we bring this Pokemon up to the same level as its original trio mates and show this Pokemon some long overdue appreciation. The next Pokemon on this list is another Generation 1 staple, Cobra. Oops, that was backwards. Arbok. Unlike Golduck and Dragonite, this Pokemon was not blessed with good stats. Arbok is flexing a solid 448 base stat total, and that is after they were forced to boost its attack by 10, leaving it still unusable. I mean, what are with the stat spreads on some of these Gen 1 Pokemon? However, the real disgrace is again completely ignoring one of the most obvious regional form options in the Kanto region. This snake is often paired up by fans with its other pure poison types from the Kanto region, Weezing and Muck. However, both Weezing and Muck stand out pretty substantially from Arbok, both boasting a base stat total at least 40 points higher than Arbok since Generation 1. And the fact that both of these Pokemon got regional forms being Alolan Muck and Galarian Weezing. Arbok has been left behind since the first generation compared to these poison pals, and it really is disappointing given how many options we have for a regional form. Even in the manga, we have a great option for regional Arboks with the concept that Arboks with different patterns get their stats boosted in different ways, whether it be through speed, attack, or defense. This option has been present since Generation 2 even in the games. Arbok had a different pattern on its sprites between each generation. Kanto Arbok looks different from Johto Arbok, which looks different from Hoenn, and of course, Sinnoh keeps up the trend. According to the Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow Pokédexes, Arbok has at least 6 different patterns that vary from region to region, although in-game they haven't really altered its pattern since Diamond and Pearl. However, Arbok being an obvious choice for a new form or even an evolution given its abysmal stats isn't just limited to in-game facts. I mean, Arbok is a snake. We have over 3,000 snake species in the world, and any one of them would be an amazing form or evolution for our Gen 1 snake. This is 10 times more species than dogs and monkeys, and we know how many dog and monkey Pokemon we have, even getting some new ones in the Scarlet and Violet DLC. Saying that there are no ideas for a regional Arbok or evolution simply isn't a good reason. There are lots of inspirations from the real world to canon Pokemon world and even from fans. It is certainly time that one of the Pokemon that made us fall in love with Jesse and James gets a little love in return. Before we move on to the last spot in this list, let's shout out some honorable mentions. Dugong deserves an honorable mention for getting the most basic design and name combination in all of Kanto and still not getting a regional form to fix this extreme simplicity. I also have to include Starmie because I wanted to get a regional form really badly to make my theory of it, Minior, and Deoxys being related into a reality, and I just really like Starmie. Speaking of gaining a new form, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can unlock your new form as an SB Juju subscriber. The last slot in this video goes to not one, but two Pokemon. Pokemon that are so unloved that they can't even get their own slot in this video. This slot belongs to the two normal flying types the Game Freak has not really done anything with in 9 generations. The big birds, Dodrio and Fearow. These two have been living in the shadow of Pidgeot and Farfetch'd since the Kanto games were released. Both of those birds have even gotten new forms or evolutions, with Pidgeot getting a Mega and Farfetch'd getting a regional form and a new evolution. Between the two birds left behind, Dodrio definitely shines in the stat department with a 470 base stat total and a respectable 110 speed stat. But Dodrio's main issue lies with the lack of new forms, as this Pokemon is another phenomenal choice for regional variants. Dodrio's basic design of just a brown bird with 3 heads allows it to really be able to take on the form of any real-world bird that now has 3 heads. Perhaps that could be a crane, a cassowary, or my personal choice, a blue-footed booby. In reality, the flying type for Dodrio doesn't really make much sense, as unlike the other flying type birds in Pokemon, it seems to be lacking a certain pair of appendages that would assist in the flying type. I know this is Pokemon and logic doesn't matter, but it is pretty clear that Dodrio's flying type is a relic from the beta Pokemon type found in Generation 1, the bird typing. I believe it is time to free this bird from the restraints of the flying type. Make it a grass type dandelion to match its puffy body, make it a water type and create the blue-footed bird I've always wanted. There are so many options when it comes to making this Pokemon stand out from the multitude of other normal flying types in this game, and take real advantage of that speed stat. But Fearow, on the other hand, unfortunately needs more than a regional form to make use of its horrible, horrible stats. Fearow actually has the worst base stat total of any Pokemon mentioned in this video, with a depressing 442. To save Fearow, a new evolution is desperately needed. Fearow has always been the disappointing sibling when compared to the majestic Pidgeot. It was only a 2-stage line, many fans consider it ugly against Pidgeot's glorious mane, and when Ash was given a Pidgeotto in the anime, Fearow's fate as the unloved normal flying bird was sealed. Perhaps the Pokemon Company is worried an evolution will make this Pokemon appear too similar to Ho-Oh, as that was already a common point of confusion among young fans between Generations 1 and Generation 2. But after 9 generations of learning Pokemon design tips and tricks, I think that Fearow could easily be given an evolution that not only differs from Ho-Oh, but makes it, dare I say, usable. But what do you think? What Kanto Pokemon is unloved not only by fans but by the Pokemon Company itself? And what ideas do you have to give new forms or evolutions to the Pokemon discussed in the video or other Generation 1 Pokemon? Make sure to let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you want to see my takes on Johto Pokemon that are unloved, and hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you next time when the adventure continues.